You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 102. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Welcome to the last episode of Season 2 and the last episode of 2021. Today's episode is the Season 2 version of an episode that I did at the end of last year in 2020 when I shared my year in review. And just to give you some context about these end-of-year episodes, at the end of 2019, I had decided that I wanted a way to collect some standard information all throughout the year in a systematic way so that I would be able to have an end-of-year process. And this method that I came up with and started using at the end of 2019 and have used ever since was my monthly interview. And I explained the whole process of how I do an interview with myself each month in last year's end-of-year episode. So you can go listen to that now at bexb.org/by2020. That's BYE2020. And I will also link that episode to the show notes for this episode at bexb.org/2021out. So that's 2021 OUT. So you can just go there and get the links to everything that I'm telling you about today. I have been loving this interview practice over the past 2 years because I get to see if there are any patterns or continuity or huge changes from month to month. And it is a very enjoyable exercise that I do look forward to every month. Midway through 2021, after I had launched the journal shop, I also created a notebook with the monthly interview questions. So if you want to join me in this monthly and yearly review process, you can get the notebook and you can have an interview with yourself every month starting in 2022. The notebook is also linked at bexb.org/2021out. But you do not need a special notebook in order to follow this process. You are welcome to use the questions that I have been using and enjoying for the past 2 years, and you certainly can choose your own questions too. For myself, I keep these questions on a Google document, and every few months I print out copies of the questions on a half sheet of paper so that they fit inside my journal. I print them, I cut them to the half size, and then I pre-tape them with double-sided tape so that I have a stack of these interviews ready to go when I need them. And then on the day of the month when it's time for my interview, I go get one of these pre-printed, pre-cut, pre-taped pages that's all ready to go, and I thoughtfully answer each of the questions. Then I tape that page into my journal so that it is in chronological order with the rest of my journal writing and so that it's ready for me to reread after I do next month's interview. But most importantly, I have them all stuck where I can find them in context for when I do this end-of-year review. For today, I want to share with you a few realizations, surprises, lessons learned, and all of the interesting things that I saw as I reviewed my entire inventory of monthly interviews from this past year. I did this year's review a little differently than I did last year's review. Last year, I got out some blank pages, and as I looked at each of the answers to each of the questions, I made notes and I noticed what stood out to me so that I basically had the entire full year of the chronological answers to each of these questions on these note pages. And this year, I used one of my favorite tech tools that I told you about in the Tech Tips episode from a few months ago, and I dictated all of my answers and I just let technology transcribe it for me. That was amazing because then I got to hear those answers in my own voice as I was compiling them all question by question. And the most fun part about it was reading through all of the compiled answers that had been all typed up for me by technology. And I really got to see my patterns, progression, what stayed the same, and what has changed. So if you have already caught my excitement and my wholehearted recommendation for this practice, I hope you will consider this for yourself next year. It is such a lovely self-reflection and self-awareness exercise. It reminded me of things that I had forgotten. It gave me a quick reference list of the TV shows, podcasts, books, and other types of media that I have consumed this year that I'm sure I would have forgotten about otherwise. I have all of this information in one place, so now I can share the highlights with you today. I want to tell you about some patterns that I noticed as I reviewed the entire year, and I'll tell you some of the surprises too. I'll tell you who my top 3 new teachers were in 2021, my top 3 novels, the top 3 TV shows I watched, and my top 3 songs. And then I want to share some realizations and lessons learned that I was reminded of because of this process. And then finally, we will end with what I think might be coming up for me in 2022. Let's talk about patterns. Frequently in 2021, I noticed a pattern of me agreeing to do something that I did not really want to do, but I thought I should do it, or that it would be a good idea, or that it would be quote unquote the right thing to do. So then I would have this self-created obligation that I wasn't really that interested in or connected to, and then I would feel resistance to that obligation. So that's a good thing for me to notice. If I don't want to do something, I should just decide not to do it. I should just say no instead of suffering with that resistance that will definitely come because I don't want to do it. And this leads me to the second pattern that I noticed, that was I suffered more than I needed to in 2021. This comes back to an expression that I learned from one of my past favorite teachers who I have told you about, Jenny Blake. The expression is, don't suffer twice. The idea of that expression means instead of worrying about something that may or could or might happen in the future, just wait until it actually does really happen and then suffer for it if it requires suffering. But don't worry about it and create suffering for yourself in advance before it even becomes reality. Well, I did not follow my own advice a few times. Throughout 2021, I found myself frequently obsessing and worrying and cringing over something that had not even happened yet. I was sure I knew how it would play out, and I was sure I knew I wouldn't like it, or I was sure that something that I thought was going to happen wouldn't work. So there I was suffering before the actual occurrence. And of course, I created my own reality, and then I did suffer as it actually happened. The third pattern is actually a complete 180 from the last 2 patterns that I just mentioned. And so this one is really good. As I reviewed all the different months, I saw the pattern of how frequently I was open to experimentation. I got ideas for things and I just tried them. I just ran with them and experienced them. Some of them were not that great. Some of them were kind of flops, but I just love how open I was. When I got an idea or a brainstorm, when I thought something might work, I just said to myself, let me try it. And then I got to experience it. The fourth pattern that I noticed that I really want to start to keep an eye on, now that I have seen this in the previous 2 years, is a possible weather-mood connection. I really noticed how my mood and my motivation and so many things dipped or dropped or slowed down for me in the later summer months. And I attribute this to a summertime version of seasonal affective disorder. Here in Arizona, it seems like, for me at least, it's too hot to go outside and to do anything. And this could be coupled with some pandemic-related situations as well. But this pattern is a good thing for me to be aware of, and I can plan for it and I can mitigate for it in future years. that summer seasonal affective disorder that I might have may also lead into the next pattern that I noticed, which is this year, just like in the previous year, I started to feel a lot of resistance. In fact, I know that I created resistance for myself, coincidentally, both times in the month of August. And I do think it could be attributed to the dip in my mood and motivation that came from being indoors for so long in the summertime. I know it came from my own thoughts, thinking that there was nothing that I could do because it was too hot and I didn't want to go anywhere and I couldn't go anywhere. So this is just a good thing for me to be on the lookout for in 2022. The next pattern is seeing how I could get myself into a situation where I find myself agreeing to something or compromising on something that I don't really want to do. If I know it's really a no for me, I now realize I should not compromise. I just want to say no. And the final pattern that I'll tell you about is my question of where is the balance? I am continuing this pattern of using this question into 2022, and I am very curious how I will find a solution to this conundrum. I notice that I frequently talk about how I am looking for balance. I was trying to find balance. I was curious about what my natural rhythm would be or could be or should be. So I have an experiment now that I'm trying as I go into 2022, and maybe at the end of next year, when I do my 2022 end of year episode, I'll tell you how I successfully cracked the code of finding my balance. I have some fun and not so fun surprises to share that happened in 2021. One of my most amazing and beautiful surprises that I am so grateful for and has opened to so many other opportunities for me was forming the Surrender Study Group. Early in 2021, I read the book, It's Not Your Money by Tosha Silver. I loved it so much. I wanted to talk about it with other people. The pleasant surprise is the very lovely community that came together in March and April for weekly discussions about each chapter of the book. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that I would be creating and hosting a very interesting and unique study group, I would have thought, no way. I had never even heard of that author or that book. I would have thought, how could I even find the people to join? But it all came together as one of my favorite surprises of 2021. And you can hear more of the behind the scenes of that experience in the Bright Ideas and Brainstorm episode that I did earlier this year. I fully attribute this next surprise to the work that I did while I was in that study group and because I read that book. The biggest surprise of 2021 for me is that I launched a journal and notebook shop. I did not see that coming. It was not on my horizon. I had no personal interest or experience in designing books and thinking of workbooks or journals. It was nowhere in my peripheral vision at all. And luckily, I got the idea and the motivation for creating notebooks and journals in March, and I decided to experiment with it. And this is one of those fun experiments that I mentioned a while ago. I got a downpour of creativity and excitement and motivation. I loved every minute of it. I just couldn't stop thinking about and talking about journals and notebook ideas. And now, here we are about 9 months later, and I have close to 200 notebooks available in the shop, and I have another stream of income, and I have a completely fulfilling creativity outlet that I did not have before. It has just been so wonderful. Another surprise for me in 2021, which I would not wish on my worst enemy, but it happened to me, and I made it through, is that my Facebook account got hacked. I lost about 10 years of connections, photos, memories, groups, and everything that I had been doing on Facebook. And I use Facebook for my business. I love using it as a way to connect with people and a way to meet people and to deepen connections and further friendships. So it was really difficult when I lost my access. And it's continuing to be a not so pleasant surprise because I had a lot of different things linked to that Facebook account, my Instagram and my Facebook business page and a number of groups and some memberships that I'm in. Part of why I'm sharing this is as a cautionary tale. Maybe take a little assessment of how much you do is connected through your Facebook identity. Once I got hacked, even after many, many attempts and research and much pleading and getting lots of advice from other people and trying lots of different routes, I was unsuccessful at reinstating my original account. And it really made me question, do I even want to participate in a program that is so uncaring about the end user? Well, I decided that I do for now. So I did end up creating a new Facebook account. So if we are not currently connected on Facebook, please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you, especially if we were in the past and we lost our connection. Losing Facebook was an interesting surprise. Not one that I would hope for or wish for, but I am happy to share my experience with you. It really gave me a chance to pause as I waited, as I was searching for all of my options to reinstate my account. I waited for about a month before I decided just to go ahead and create a new one. And it was interesting to watch myself through that month without access. It gave me a lot of opportunity for experimentation as well, because I did still want to connect with people. I still wanted to have access to other groups. So there were some happy byproducts of that unpleasant surprise. The final surprise to make it into today's episode is that I started the journaling and friendship meetup and Facebook groups. I was curious if anyone wanted to privately journal together publicly, and I wondered if anyone was interested in getting daily journal prompts from me. So I've been having so much fun with these groups. The meetup group is on the Meetup platform at meetup.com. And the purpose of that group is to give us a way to connect with other people who love or are curious about journaling and then come together in person once a month to journal privately together publicly. We spend a little bit of our time on our own, but in the same room journaling, and then we use the rest of the time to chat and get to know each other. And we've had some really interesting discussions. And even though we're just a few months into this relationship, I can see some bonds forming and some connections being made. The Journaling and Friendship Facebook group is another way for people to find out about that in-person meeting. And also, the other benefit of the Facebook group is that I post a journal prompt each morning. And I love that different people are seeing each prompt daily. Maybe they don't write about it. Maybe they just think about it. Maybe they do journal about it. Some people just answer the prompt inside the group, and that's a form of journaling, right? They are technically thinking about and then writing down their answer to the prompt. So creating these two groups has been a fun surprise and not something that I would have predicted. I'm just really curious to see how these two journaling and friendship groups continue to expand and evolve, and how the members of the groups connect with each other while they deepen their journaling practices. Let's switch and talk about my new teachers in 2021. I have had many more than just 3 new teachers in 2021, but I decided for brevity and for shining the brightest spotlight possible, I would only just choose the top 3 that have been important to me this year to share with you. The number 1 teacher for me in 2021 has taught me the biggest surprise and the biggest lesson learned, which is all the work that I have done with surrender. So, of course, my number 1 teacher in 2021 has been Michael Singer, the author of The Surrender Experiment. Hearing that book basically just blew my mind right open in the beginning of the year. I listened to the book and then I turned around and just re-listened immediately. I got so much curiosity and interest in the topic of surrender, and I just had to learn more and find more teachers. And I am so grateful for the book showing up in my life when it did. It was exactly what I needed in that moment. It was exactly what I needed to lead me to find my next new favorite teacher, who is Tosha Silver. She wrote the book, among others, It's Not Your Money. And prior to having heard about surrender and prior to having entered this quest that I entered at the beginning of the year to learn more and find out more and understand more, I would have probably been turned off by the title of her book. I don't have what I consider money blocks. Money is not a huge topic in my life, and I feel pretty confident and abundant and set for life when it comes to money. So a book talking about money is just not that interesting to me. I was pleasantly surprised that the book is not actually about money. It's about abundance, and it's about being a conduit, and I just loved it. Tosha Silver has been such an important and wonderful teacher for me this year. That was the book that I used as the content for the Surrender Study Group in March and April, and then that Surrender Study Group blossomed into an idea for a surrender camp that I facilitated this summer. So I have learned so much information, advice, and realizations from these two teachers, helping me learn all about surrender in 2021. On the other end of the spectrum, my third favorite teacher to tell you about is a neuroscientist called Dr. Tara Swart. I heard her being interviewed on a podcast, and I immediately wanted to find other podcast interviews so that I could learn more from her. She has a book called The Source, which, of course, I immediately listened to, and then halfway through listening to it, I realized I needed the paper copy too so that I could highlight and make notes and mark things up. I really recommend listening to her being interviewed or get her book. She has a few TED Talks. She's very prolific on so many topics, and I really appreciate what I have learned from Dr. Tara Swart so far, and I'm looking forward to learning so much more from her as I continue my own studies. Let's talk about some more entertainment type content that I have appreciated in 2021. I spent a lot of time reading. Not all of the books that I read made it into my monthly interviews. I didn't mention them all. And I was pleasantly reminded when I saw the books that did make it into my monthly recaps. Two of them happened to be by the same author. That's just a coincidence, but a happy one. I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid with my eyes on the Kindle. I didn't listen to it, but I have heard from other people that it is an amazing book to listen to because the book is told in an interview format, and apparently the audiobook has different actors for each character, so you really get that experience of hearing the different voices. It was a very interesting story told in a very unique way. It captured my attention. I really liked it. It made me want to go find other books in the same genre and by the same author, which brings us to the next book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, also by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The book tells a fictional story of an actress who I like to think of as based on an Elizabeth Taylor type character. I just found it very captivating. It was one of those books that I just got lost in, and I didn't want the story to end. And the third book that made it to the top of my list is a little bit more out of character for me. It was described as a visceral thriller. Ooh, it had a murder mystery. It was psychological. It's called Take Me Apart by Sarah Sliger. And it was a little bit on the darker side, but I did really love reading it. And I recommended it to people directly after reading it. And then I forgot that I had read it until I was compiling the monthly interviews and I saw it again and I remembered, oh yeah, that was a really good book. Last year's top song for me was Blinding Lights by the artist The Weeknd. And this year, my top song is also by the same artist. It's called Save Your Tears. So I had a few Zumba workouts with the song. I loved it whenever it came on the radio. It's a beautiful duet with Ariana Grande, and I love everything about the song. My second favorite song is actually not a specific song. It's a collection of songs by the artist Olivia Rodrigo. Anything that Olivia Rodrigo shared in 2021, I was there for it. I appreciated it. I loved it. I wanted to hear it. I hoped it came on if I happened to be listening to the radio. And my third favorite song is kind of a love to hate it song. It was funny when I was talking about it with my friends. They did not understand my attraction to the song. We just had so much criticism for it, but still I am claiming it as a top song for me in 2021. It's called Without You, and it is by The Kid Laroi. I do not care for the single version, the solo. I actually prefer the duet with Miley Cyrus. I watched a lot of TV in 2021 and I had a lot of fun with it. I could do a whole episode on all the TV shows that I loved and all the reboots introducing or reintroducing us to our favorite characters from previous shows and series. That was an interesting trend that I really appreciated. The TV shows that I binged and recommended and rewatched in some cases and cannot wait for upcoming episodes or seasons are 2 comedies and kind of a crime show. The first one is a show on HBO called The Other Two. It's the story of the brother and sister of a child star. So those two, are basically the other two. They are not the child star. The show is funny and smart and shares things in a very real way that I really appreciate. Plus, the humor, I just really love the humor. The second show to tell you about is more of a crime show. The name is so deceptive. This show is called Animal Kingdom. It sounds like a nature show when you hear the title, but it is not. There are no animals in the show. It is a TNT drama about a family of surfers who live in Oceanside, California, and they live on the criminal side. So you get to see all of the drama and all of the capers that they do and all of the family interactions that they have. I love Oceanside, so getting to see some of the scenery and little glimpses of Oceanside was so fun, while also being, of course, pulled in by the family and crime drama. And I told my husband that he had to watch the show, so we both got hooked on it and we both binged it. And then luckily, a new season came out, so that became a weekly ritual for the two of us to watch the new episode together each week as it came out. And then the third show that I love so much is so out of character for me. It is not my style at all. It is a show about vampires. This is a television show based on a movie that I haven't seen, and I haven't watched the movie, so I don't know how similar it is, but the show is called What We Do in the Shadows. It is the story of vampire roommates who live in present-day Staten Island. I don't love it because it's about vampires. I just love the humor, the writing, the characters. It's hilarious. So if you are interested in something that is kind of funny and light and silly, you might be interested in this vampire roommate comedy on FX. So we've talked about books, we've talked about songs, we've talked about TV shows. Let's get into my realizations and lessons learned in 2021. This year, I decided not to list out 15 lessons learned for you with no context. I realized some of my lessons learned may be lessons I am learning or realizations. They are not quite a standard concept that can just be summed up in a statement. You might notice some themes that I have already referred to throughout this episode so far. The first lesson learned, or maybe a realization we could call it, is how my mind closes to possible options when I am feeling angry or afraid. I just want to remember and be aware so that when I am angry or afraid or worried about something, my mind closes up to options and possibilities. One of my favorite things to say is there are so many options, but when I'm feeling angry or afraid, I do not tend to remember how many options there really are. The second lesson learned, which has been very valuable and I also love repeating, is I give myself permission to have been wrong in the past. Ooh, this one is so liberating. It is so freeing. It is opening myself up instead of closing myself down. The third lesson learned is that I am learning to live my life without needing to be or do anything. This really goes along with everything that I've learned as I was studying surrender and learning about abundance. One of the practices I learned from Tosha Silver was to read the full Abundance Change Me poem every day, and it really changed me. That might be something that I want to get back into the habit of doing every morning in my journaling practice. I really am learning to live my life without needing to be or do anything. It is total, beautiful surrender. The fourth lesson is that I want to be aware of longer term ideas or prolonged commitments. One of the patterns I recognize is I frequently tend to lose interest halfway through something that seems to be a little longer. Sometimes something sounds really good up front and thinking it might be a year or 6 months, and then at the 3-month mark or halfway through mark, I might not be as interested as when I first started. And I have a compulsion to completion. This goes back to the whole saying no when it's a no. So I just want to be aware of it. One of the things I'm going to experiment with in 2022 is doing things in shorter spurts. Maybe I will just commit to half the time that my initial brain suggests to me. I can always extend something longer or continue it. The fifth lesson is one that I mentioned earlier in this episode and just recently again. It is that I really should not compromise to a yes when I know it's a no. If I don't want to do something, I really should just do myself and the other party the favor of not agreeing to do it. I want to remember that I have the option to be honest and authentic and still kind about what I do and don't want to spend my time on. Saying no does not have to be unkind. Saying no can just be honest and authentic. The next lesson learned is something that I am loving playing with right now. This lesson has kind of come to me here in the most recent months of 2021, and I intend to use it to its fullest advantage as I go into 2022. The lesson is that my brain will go to work solving whatever task I give it. If I think of some random hypothetical problem when my mind is just wandering, something like, how would astronauts behave in the space station? My brain will actually really expend energy and time going to work to solve that or answer that, even though it has nothing to do with me in my life. I will never find myself in a space station. I will not become an astronaut, but my brain will still go to work to solve whatever I present it with. I love that power and that capacity. So now I want to harness that and I want to put my brain to work solving the problems that I do really care about and that I do want to solve. It's been really fun watching this happen for me in the last few weeks, and I cannot wait to see what solutions my brain will come up with as soon as I give it the specific tasks that I care about and that I want to solve. And a realization that keeps on showing up for me as a pattern is that I do struggle with the right amount of productivity. I want to try to find balance between my productivity and my free time. And I am trying to learn to pause before responding and to allow just even a little bit of blank space. What is coming up for me in 2022? Who knows, right? But I am looking forward to, and I am considering so much for next year. I'm about to take a break from these weekly podcast episodes before starting season 3. If you didn't hear it in the 100th episode, today will be the last episode of season 2 and this format or style of weekly episodes. In the meantime, I am very excited to announce that I recently obtained my partner certification with the software company called Keep. It was formerly called Infusionsoft. So I am looking forward to moving my business email and calendaring system and landing pages and so much of the technology that I use in my business. I'm moving it all over to the Keep platform. And that's Keep, K-E-A-P. Sometimes people aren't sure what I'm saying. Because I am now a certified partner, I am able to help other people use the software as well. And that's something that I'm really focusing on. In my coaching practice, I am continuing, of course, to be focused on resistance. And now, even more specifically, I am focusing on technology resistance. So I'm curious to see how this grows and blooms. I have a feeling that I will be able to use my new status as a certified partner with Keep in tech resistance coaching situations. So far this month, my gift to my fellow business owners and all of my colleagues has been to offer a tech workshop each Wednesday of December. We've already had 3. We have 2 more to go this month. Next Wednesday's workshop will be about setting up an email opt-in or a freebie that you can automatically email out to people who are interested in your product or service. My freebie is my 5 favorite tech tricks to help you in your business. So if you want to know what my favorite business tech tricks are, you might either want to come to my workshop on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Arizona time, or just go to my website at bexby.org/techresistance, all squished together, no spaces, and you can request this quick and easy 1-page PDF document. And just give me your email and I will email it to you automatically with automation. Then the Wednesday after that, so far, the plan is to host a technology study hall so people can just come with their technology questions and problems and curiosities, and we will just treat it like a Q&A period to work on our own and maybe together and figure things out. So if you want help with technology, please reach out to me. Maybe you can come to the workshops. Maybe we can set up a coaching session for you. Maybe you want to join me in using this software that I am now starting to use. There are so many options. And because I will be switching everything over to my new platform, be on the lookout for any emails or messages from me asking you to open my email through the new email provider. Or if you are afraid that emails from me are not getting delivered to you anymore, be sure to check your junk, your spam, your promotion folders to make sure those emails did not get sent to the wrong place by mistake. So that is my wrap up for 2021 and my look ahead to 2022. What do you think? Do you have any questions or comments for me? Send me an email at hi@bexby.org or leave me a comment in the show notes for this episode at bexby.org/2021OUT. 2021 out. Thank you so much for joining me throughout season 2. I hope I have given you some insight into how you can release your resistance. Enjoy whatever you are celebrating right now. Happy New Year, and I will talk with you sometime next year when season 3 starts. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexby.org to see how we can work together.